Hello and welcome to this week's webinar. My name's Nathan Batchelor and I'll be your host for today. So before I begin, I'm just going to read through this disclaimer. Please feel free to read along as well. Beyond Trader LLC is strictly a research publishing firm. The information we publish is based on our opinions, plus our quantitative models, statistical and financial data, and independent research. This service is not registered with any financial regulatory agency, such as the SEC or any other organization or governmental body. By using our platform or our services, you acknowledge we do not provide personalized recommendation or advice. Alternative asset classes are volatile investments and carry significant risk. Please do your own research before making any financial decisions. Okay, so on this week's agenda, we're going to be looking at Bollinger Bands. So as always, I try to combine not only some educational material, but also something topical for today. So I'll be comparing it to Bitcoin and the recent price action. And I'll also be looking at a selection of altcoins, also combining Bollinger Bands and what they can tell us for the week ahead for the market. So getting straight to it with Bollinger Bands. So in this webinar, I'll be looking at specifically how they apply to Bitcoin and what they can imply for the week ahead. So in case you didn't know, the Bollinger Bands are a volatility indicator that consists of three simple moving averages. So you've got one in the middle and the two bands set apart, and they're basically measured by a standard deviation level above and below this key moving average in the middle. So essentially, you've got three bands. These bands either expand or contract based on the market volatility, which I'm going to show you in a moment. So when the crypto price moves close to the upper band, it indicates that the asset may be overbought. Conversely, when the price approaches the lower band, it sometimes suggests that the asset could be oversold. So this is helpful in crypto trading because it can help traders identify potential exit and entry points, providing insights into price trends and market volatility. And as you can see, this here is a chart of Bitcoin, and we're going to run it through time frame by time frame. So this is a weekly chart, and you can see there's a couple of key factors here. So firstly, you can see that the bands are at extreme width lengths. So you can see the top or the upper band is pointing extremely upwards and the bottom is pointing downwards, almost like two hands pointed together, and they're starting to separate from each other, pointed in the opposite direction. And you can see the mid band is also pointing up. So this is kind of suggesting that there's a strong uptrend. And something that's notable here is that we've seen a breakout above the upper Bollinger band there. And I think it's important to note that this Bollinger Band comes in around 91,000, and I'll show you why that's so important at the moment. If we can compare the same period during the last bull market, something that's really interesting here is that the Bollinger Bands, even though we stayed above those Bollinger Bands here, during the latter ends of or towards the end, we started to move inside that Bollinger Band as things weren't as strong. And you can note here that we're nowhere near going inside that Bollinger Band at the moment, and that could be suggestive that the market is still going to head higher next week, and we could see a continuation with, I guess, a limited amounts of pullbacks. Here is the monthly Bollinger Band, and you can see that we closed the monthly candle above that Bollinger Band, and that could mean that we're going to head higher next week as well. Also, if you have a look previously in the bull markets, every time that we're holding above that Bollinger Band, it's very strong. So I guess the only thing to note is that if we did fall underneath the Bollinger Band for the month, then we could get a sharp decline. What I do find interesting is the quarterly, and it kind of suggests that we've broke out as well as pointing upwards. But even more interesting is the daily. So the daily Bollinger Band is currently going sideways, and you can see it's kind of contracting after breaking out to the upside. So it's currently showing that the next big Bollinger Band breakout is around 100,900. If we don't get above there, then there's a chance we fall back to the mid around 93,764, or we fall down to about 86,000. So that could be a key area to watch for failure. And also they're starting to tighten, which suggests that a move is getting closer and closer to breakout. So the fact that we're moving upwards is also a good sign. So when the bands are tilted upwards, it suggests that upward movement is strong. So any move back towards the lower band would probably suggest a good buying opportunity to for now. So if you are looking at these levels as being a little bit too high or toppy for you, and you do prefer to buy in a pullback, then maybe the daily Bollinger Band, maybe some overshoot underneath there, and a few daily closes closing above there could be all the confirmation you need to go long again in the market. And if we look at the 4 hour time frame, it's kind of suggesting the same. Is It's actually aligning really well with our Beyond Vanguard indicator on the weekly time frame. So the weekly time frame will give a buy signal again if we move back above 98,200, and this comes in around 98,100. So it's reflecting the same as what some of our other models are in terms of what we need to see for a breakout. And I guess if we get underneath 94 792, then we flip bearish again. And also a key point to note about these bands is that sometimes when we fall underneath the bands, they tend to turn down. And once they start to turn down, the momentum in that direction starts to pick up, and that's also the same for the upside as well. So a few interesting points there. So I thought it'd be useful just to give you some pros and cons in terms of Bollinger Bands. They can obviously be helpful to identify volatility and potential trend reversals in the market. I think importantly, they provide visual boundaries for price movements, making it easier to spot overbought and oversold conditions. I think that can sometimes be a challenge in a trending market. In a non-trending market, it may be more useful, but in a powerful trending market, I think we could also sometimes put that to one side. I think traders can use Bollinger Bands to determine entry and exit points based on the interaction with the band. But again, I'd really profile exactly what market conditions we're in if we're going to use that on a regular basis. And I think it's important to note as well that there's some downside preferences that I've seen, especially over the years, in terms of like what could be the drawbacks, and I think that's important with any strategy. I think Bollinger Bands alone may not provide the most accurate signals, so they should probably be used in conjunction with other indicators, potentially our own, such as Vanguard or even analysis. I think in highly trending markets, as I mentioned earlier, prices can stay near one band for an extended period, leading to false signals. So I think the overbought conditions can sometimes be negated, and during periods of low volatility, the bands may contract, making it difficult to interpret market conditions. Although I would say if they're contracting in a sideways market, at least you know the upper and the lower ranges of the market if you did want to scalp that. It's not my game at all, but it's just some interesting information. Okay, so moving on to altcoins and how we can kind of compare this to our own analysis. So something like Ethereum is just starting to attempt to break out now, and is showing that on the weekly time frame, if we move above 3,755, then that will be a breakout on the weekly. So watch out for that next week. And I think, you know, past history has taught us that if we do start to hold above there on a weekly time frame, there's a decent chance that we're going to continue to head higher next week. I think it's important to know that we've here on the sorry, on the previous slide was a daily. This is the weekly, and it's suggesting that we've broken out on the weekly already. But do know that the bands are sloping downwards. So this to me could like potentially suggest two things. It could suggest that we're going to reverse soon, and wait for these bands to reset. Obviously, I myself personally have got some interest in buying around the 2,780 level. So the fact that they're sloping downwards is somewhat of a red flag, and maybe we'd need to move down again and this to reset sideways. So watch out for a potential fake move there as well. And I think interestingly, on the monthly, there's definitely the potential to overshoot to the upside to around the 4,128 level. But I personally have Ethereum right on resistance at the moment, and this would be the spot for me where it either reverses down to 2.7 or carries on to around 4,000 and starts to break out. I mean, if we look at the implied channel breakout, the size of that, then we're basically not too far away from the target itself. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a reversal next week. If we don't start to see Bitcoin above 100,000 in the next few weeks, then I'd be very nervous of being long this coin if I wasn't already long from like a much better entry point like 3,000 or even 2,400. So moving into next week, like I say, the potential to move to 4,000 is there. but ideally we need to see that accompanied by some Bitcoin upside. Looking to something interesting like Chainlink, and it certainly seems like it's a bit more bullish. It's got a target of around 20 if we're going to tag the upper band, and slightly expanding in the right direction, sloping in the right direction, and giving lots of scope to probably move higher. And again, on the weekly, there's a target of 21. I think there's a signal from me on the website coming in at around 14 or 15 that I've had for a long time. My target is about 30. So let's see how that plays out. But at the moment, it doesn't look too bad for Chainlink. It could easily gravitate towards 21 next week. And I think in terms of the crypto total market cap, that's also showing that it started to break out in the last few weeks. And very similar to Bitcoin, it started to expand on both bands. And that could also hint that altcoins are going to move higher next week. My ultimate target would be if it continues to hold these current levels, doesn't really slip much lower, then we could go to 4.4 trillion. That could probably equate to something like a 10 or 108, 108,000 Bitcoin, and easily a 4,100 Ethereum. So that itself is pretty interesting information. I'm going to keep this week's webinar pretty brief. I'm a little bit under the weather this week with some flu, so I just wanted to not let anybody down and get this in there. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. If not, I can be reached on Discord or email, and I will see you again on Thursday. Thank you very much for joining.